and welcome to ND Like Me. I'm your host, Andrea. I'm doing another mini episode today because I'm seeing the need to have some information out there for parents, potentially also for neurodivergent adults that struggle with toileting. Now, it's a bit of a funny topic, but there is so much to it, and in this mini episode, I just want to go through what the different areas of struggles can be, where the challenges are, how we might be able to investigate exactly what they are, and then how we can address them and support individuals so that we can make the toileting process as easy and pleasant as possible. First up, I want to say that many neurodivergent kids and adults struggle with toileting. And this is for many different reasons that I will go through, but I just want to remove some of the shame. I want to tell you, if you're a parent and your kid is struggling in that area, it's not your fault. You're not a bad parent because your kid is struggling in that area. Also, your kid isn't naughty if they refuse to go to the toilet. I know firsthand as a parent how frustrating that can be, especially if you've been doing it for years. So believe me when I say I really do know the struggle. It's important for us to remember that kids that find it challenging to go to the toilet don't do it to be naughty. There is a real struggle within them, and it's something they find difficult, and we have to do the detective work to find out what obstacles are in their way to better support and help them. So yeah, hang in there, stay patient. So the different areas of challenges can be sensory, posture, digestive issues, restrictive food intake, anxiety, and also interoception and transitions. So we will cover all of that today. Firstly, I would like you to ask yourself this question: what is their behavior telling you? So if you have a child that struggles to go to the toilet, you might see certain behaviors. You might see them hiding away, trying to hide that they need to go to the toilet. You might see them trying to go into the bathroom but holding their breath. You might see them making it into the bathroom but refusing to take their pants off. All of these behaviors are telling us something. If you are an adult, this process can be a lot more straightforward. Ask yourself, at what point of the process do you really struggle? At what point of the process do you hit your obstacles? And what might that mean? So I'll get into that in a second. First of all, we will go through each of these categories. We'll start with sensory. Sensory is a huge area, and if we look at the bathroom, there is a lot of sensory input there that might be problematic. First of all, we have a toilet smell around a toilet. Unless you have someone in your house that cleans the toilet every day, which I don't, and I have a lot of boys. So there is a smell that might be really appalling. And if you see this behavior of your child holding their breath, it might mean they're really struggling with the smell. I found you can use some toilet sprays. I know some people find artificial sprays really, really challenging, but if you look for some more natural ones, you can find some quite nice brands that actually not take the smell away rather than just covering it up. I found one particular company that I'll mention twice in this video. I'm not associated with them. They don't sponsor me. I just have found them helpful, and that is Squatty Potty. Squatty Potty, on their website, they sell a special toilet spray that actually, it's a bit expensive, it's a bit scientific, but it's meant to encompass the bad smell particles in the air. Hence, you never actually end up getting those into your nose. Something along those lines. Don't quote me on it. Better check out their website. But I found that spray to be really, really nice. And we did use it for a while. And because it is a bit expensive, we have now switched to a supermarket one that we can tolerate. So sometimes it's good to do something quite radical as an interim measure, especially if you have an autistic child, to get them used to an idea, a concept. Sometimes you can take a few steps back from that down the track. That's what we did with the spray. There's also other options. Some people like to light a match, which is meant to neutralize smells. You could light a candle. You could have lots of different smelly things. Again, if artificial smells are a problem, have a play around. It's often trial and error. The next sensory area is visual. Now, people might often not consider that, but especially autistic and ADHD people, we do get overwhelmed visually quite easily. So if there's too much clutter, it can deter us from wanting to engage with a space. It can feel overwhelming on top of other sensory input and other challenges. So just scan that area for, is there any visual clutter? Is there any visual challenges? Is there a picture my child doesn't like? It could be anything worth considering. Obviously, with the visual, you would just try to remove the clutter or create other nice visual highlights for the person or the child. Work with them, see what they would like in there. That might make it nicer for them to go to the toilet. Autistic kids especially love visual charts or a picture of something they really love, their special interest, on the toilet door. Have a try with that visually. Then you might want to look at sound. Often bathrooms are tiled quite heavily, which creates an echo sound. That could be a problem. There could be sounds from outside that might be a problem. Just screen the area for annoying sounds. Is there a dripping tap? When it comes to sounds, I found it quite helpful to use music. I don't know how you go with screens, but even if you're an adult, if you can make that experience nicer for yourself, everything's a win, right? So if you can have a special song on your phone that you play when you go to the toilet, especially for kids, that can be a real highlight. It can be a little song. There's a lot of good songs out there for kids. Have a little look. There might be something they really like. It could be a song related to their special interest. If you're an adult, figure it out. Something you like to hear. Yeah. And the next area we will talk about is the temperature in the bathroom. For some kids, that can be a big problem. You can bridge that by putting a heater in there, getting one of those heat lamps, anything you can do to make it nicer and more comfortable for them. It might be too hot in your bathroom. You might want to put an extra fan in there if it's big enough. Just scan the area, check out the child or the person and see if that might be an area of struggle as well. Alongside that, so this is more related to our input on our skin. How does it feel in the bathroom? That relates to temperature. For a child, that also relates to how does a person that cares for me handle me around the toileting. Now, especially with autistic children, we know that some of them love to be touched. Some of them like to be touched only in a specific way. Again, personally, I often have cold fingers. That can be really tricky for a lot of people and a lot of kids if I'm trying to help them go to the toilet. So in my case, I can rub my hands and warm them up before I help them put their pants down and potentially touch their skin. But this is something you can also work out with the child or another person that you might be helping and supporting. It's important to have conversations, and it's important to involve the person that is struggling if you're someone who cares for them, if you're the parent. If you make plans with them, if you say, oh, I would like to make the bathroom a nicer place. Do you have any ideas? I was thinking maybe we could hang a poster there. What do you think the poster should be of, for example? And when it comes to, helping them out of their clothes, pulling their pants down, if the child is old enough, you can have that conversation too. You can say, oh, would you like me to help you put your pants down? Would you like to do it yourself? Would you like me to do your pants, but you will do your undies? Or the other way around. And you can work out exactly what they like to have the best possible chance of that experience being a success. Now, some of our children might experience anxiety. So with autism, we often see people and also kids having nearly generalized anxiety. Some of them will also get a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. For some, it is situational. Now, there can be very weird fears around the toileting process. So I have heard and I have known kids that are just afraid of the toilet as a place. Often we have kids and even adults with hyperphantasia, with a lot of ideas and a lot of fantastical ideas and scenarios of how they make sense of the world. And I'm sure there is kids out there that think there is a toilet monster or something really terrible waiting for them to devour them once they put their naked butt on there. Snakes, all sorts of fears that can happen around going to the toilet. Now, if this is something that concerns you or your child, if it's a child, I would definitely try to address that together. I think the most important thing is not to devalue their feelings. So if they're afraid of something, say if they're afraid of a toilet monster, to say to them, there's no such thing as a toilet monster, is not actually that helpful because their nervous system is stuck in a fear response. So what we want to do is to go like, oh, that must be really hard. I wonder what we can do to help. And you work with them. You might have to be quite creative. You can come up with things like, should we get our water pistols? And the first thing we do when we go into the bathroom is we shoot into the toilet bowl. And we might even be able to put special things into that water that we shoot, like, put some lavender essential oil in or something, and tell them this toilet monsters hate this smell. If we spray that into the toilet bowl, they're not gonna come. They're gonna run away down the drain and never pop their head up again. For example, like I said, there's so many different fears surrounding the toilet. We got to get creative. But the important thing is to remind ourselves we're dealing with a child. We're not going to be able to argue our way logically out of that one. We have to come up with things that make sense to them in their world. And really, once you get stuck into that, once you can have a few good ideas like that, it can be quite fun. And that's really, at the end of the day, what dismantles anxiety and fears, is if we can make it fun and exciting rather than something where everyone tenses up. If you tense up every time your child needs to go to the toilet because it's been such a drama for so long, I know the feeling, then your child is going to feel that and their whole nervous system is automatically going to tense up. And as humans, sometimes we do something called, I don't actually know what it's called, but we back explain. Like we'll have a feeling and a sensation, maybe of fear, and then a very hyper fantastic child will come up with an explanation. We do that as grown-ups as well. If you watch Exactly, we will have a feeling, an emotion, and then our brain will try to find reasons for why we're experiencing this. So yeah, try to work with what is going on there and try to find something that gives your child a sense of control and power. That's the other thing that really dismantles fear and anxiety, is feeling like you're having choice and control over the situation. Sometimes with anxiety, when it comes to toileting, it can be really helpful, especially if you have a child, can be really helpful for them to know that you're there. You might just want to wait outside the toilet door and talk to them so they know that you are there and they're not alone in there. They might want you to be in there with them. If you can tolerate it yourself, sensory-wise, to be there, why not go in there with them and help them overcome their fears and their anxieties? I know that there's even some adults that really struggle with that probably would like it if their partner could be close by. I know this is quite a controversial topic, and there's probably somewhat of a minority of neurodivergent adults struggling with that. I just want to include them in this video because I want to validate that people of all ages can have these struggles. The next area I'd like to talk about is posture. Now, this is something that NOT made me aware of, can be quite a challenge in different environments. And when we look at the toilet, especially depending on the size of your child and their age, they might be way too small for that toilet physically, and there is a certain angle. Now, if we're talking about bowel movements specifically, there's a certain angle that bowel movements work the best. We need to have our feet elevated so that we are more in a squatting position, and that helps the bowels, the bendy bits, straighten up and actually fully empty our bowels. Now, it might be pretty tricky to know whether your child is in the right position. There is one company, they don't pay me or anything, but I have found them quite helpful. Their name is Squatty Potty. I will try to put a link in the description. And they sell special stools that fit around the toilet. Now, they're a little bit expensive. Any old little stool can do, but what's important is that the feet are kind of positioned back. So you want them to be nearly parallel to the toilet bowl and to have a really good squat position. There is videos on that online if you want to do more research. It's quite interesting. That's one. Two, you want to make sure that your child feels stable. So for very small kids or very petite kids, it can be quite a wobbly place, especially if we're also dealing with hypermobility, dyspraxia, things like that. You want to make sure that they feel safe and stable in the way that they're seated. Now, there's a lot of different other options for creating a stable seat for your kid. So it is possible to get a smaller toilet seat for your child. Some of them either just sit on top, or you can purchase one that permanently goes on there. That might make a difference. There's also some more frame-like structure where they have handles to hold on to on the side. So you might want to look around what's available to you in your area and experiment and see which one works best for your child. Another really common one is having interoception issues. So interoception is being able to read your own bodily signals. So noticing them, then interpreting them correctly, and then acting on them. So if you think about it, going to the toilet requires us to do a whole sequence of steps internally to be able to get to the point of like, oh, I need to go to the toilet, and I'm doing that now. Recognizing that there is a feeling actually, and then reading that feeling correctly. Oh, this feeling, my belly feeling very full, means I need to go to the toilet. And then acting on that and executing that step. That can be very tricky for some kids and also some grown-ups. Now, we know that especially with autism, there often is problems in this area. And that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. We can refine and develop these skills. And with young children, it starts with giving them a language and a way of thinking about it that supports their own development in that area. So as a mum and an educator that has cared for many children, I can tell you there is a definite toilet face. And most kids will have that toilet face just before they need to do a poo. And some kids might even at that point not notice themselves that they need to go. So learning to read the signs of what happens for that person or that child is really important if you want to support them. There's a lot of kids, this is also really common, that will hide in the corner before they need to do a poo. So again, and you can also have struggles with bladder control. That is probably more easily solved by going like, well, having a bit of a schedule. Even with number twos, having a schedule can really help, of having certain times in certain intervals of just trying to go to the toilet. I know that when we are adults, we're not supposed to pee too many times. Adult women, that's what I'm told anyway. There can be issues with bladder control. With kids that struggle with interoception, I think it is a little bit different. So consult a healthcare professional. Don't quote me on it, but this is just my recommendation from personal experience. So again, how do we train that interoceptive skill? Asking questions like, how does your belly feel? How does it feel when you push into your belly? Do you feel really full? Does your belly stick out? Often young kids will also, if they're not very skilled with their interoception, they will confuse that feeling for hunger. So you often see kids suddenly being ravenous and going, I'm really hungry, I need food right now, and maybe also having some food and then being ready to go to the toilet. So just try to keep a watch of those signs, and once you know what they are, point them out to the child and go like, oh, I noticed that often when you feel like this, afterwards you need to go to the toilet. Maybe this feeling that you're feeling isn't actually hunger. Maybe this means you're ready to go to the toilet. Maybe we'll try and see if you're still hungry afterwards. You can make it an experiment. You can try to make it fun. What often works for slightly nerdy kids or scientifically interested kids is to make it a scientific inquiry and go like, oh, let's do an experiment with our bodies. Let's see, if we do this, how do we feel? If we do that, how do we feel different? There's probably a lot more to be said for interoception. If it's something that you think your child is really struggling with, I highly recommend seeing an occupational therapist. They are specialized in many things and they can actually help with many of these areas, but specifically interoception. Yeah, so I recommend find someone that specializes in seeing kids your kid's age and also with those neurodivergences that your child has or that you're suspecting. Now, the next point I'd like to mention is transitions. This again is a very significant one, specifically for someone in hyperfocus. So again, we're talking ADHD, autism, these kids, OCD. If these kids are focused on something and they're not finished, often they don't want to stop to go to the toilet. They might have the interoception, they might have not have the interoception to know that they have to go, but if they're in the middle of something, they're not going to want to go. So again, this is why I also find it helpful to observe and maybe have somewhat of a toileting schedule, because then you can preempt as the carer of like, oh, you want to start this activity now, but it's nearly time to go to the toilet. Maybe we need to go to the toilet first before you can start this activity. Now, this is a little bit of a bribe, but I find it often is quite efficient and a lot easier than trying to tear them out of an activity that they don't have the skills, the executive function to just stop and walk away from. Even I, as an adult, struggle to stop something when I'm in the middle of it and walk away from it, especially if I'm really deeply engaged at any point. So I do get that that can be a real challenge for anyone. And if we're dealing with neurodivergent kids, I know this sounds really boring, but schedules and visuals can be really helpful. So if you have a child, for example, that struggles with this transition thing, you might want to give them a plan for the morning or for the afternoon, for those times when we tend to go to the toilet, and see where the toileting would be in the sequence of morning events. So you might get up, have breakfast, then have one activity, like one game, then it's time for them to go to the toilet. And if they're very young and they can't read yet, you might be able to take photos. So you could take photos of them doing the activity, put these together in a poster, or print them out, stick the photos on, make them a poster, go like, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is what we're doing, and help them that way and build the toileting into the routine so that they don't have to transition in and out of a preferred activity. This has been a really big step for me and my child personally while we're navigating this. So I know it sounds tedious, but believe me when I say it's taken a lot of stress out of our daily schedule, and it's definitely reduced the struggles. Another really big point that I'd like to go over are digestive issues. I don't know that science has really figured out why, but often us neurodivergent people do struggle with digestive issues, whether that's because we're already operating under a stressed nervous system, higher levels of anxiety, don't know. Now, what we see with kids is that there can be a range of different things that can influence the toileting. So digestive issues, for one, can be constipation, can be diarrhea, can be related and heavily influenced by restrictive food intake. There's ARFID, which is actually a eating disorder that a lot of people with autism experience. There might be any of those. There might also be differences in sleep patterns that mean your child doesn't wake up to go and do a pee. All things I've seen in my time. There's a lot of things we can do to influence that. Now, if you have troubles with bladder control, if your child doesn't wake up to go to the toilet, there is actually a sensor you can get from your local chemist, or they can order it in possibly. You might be able to buy it online. So there is a sensor that you can clip on their undies or their nappy if you prefer them to wear one at night. Also, don't shame all the kids wearing nappies. It's totally fine. A lot of people actually do it, so don't make them feel bad for it. And you clip the sensor on, and at the first drop of wee in the night, an alarm sounds, and it basically rewires the neurology. It's pretty cruel. It wakes people up with a loud, alarming noise. But if you keep on doing that for about 2 weeks, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, you'll have trained that child to actually wake up and do their pee in the toilet. And some kids might not be interested to do that. For some kids, you might have to find extra incentive, like being able to have sleepovers or other perks. But when they're ready, that is a really efficient way of helping with that nighttime bladder control. Now, back to digestive issues as such. Constipation can be managed by giving your child a certain amount of laxatives. Again, go to your local chemist. There is a protocol that you can go on to. If you're not confident doing this on your own, you can go to your GP. GPs are usually quite knowledgeable prescribing a protocol like that. Now, if none of these things work, or if you're not confident doing any of them on your own, you can also go to a specialist. There's incontinence physios. I have one in my local area that deals with women's health, but also children. And she has been a miracle worker. She has helped me and my youngest child so much. And what they can do, other health professionals as well, again, talk to your GP. You can get an ultrasound done for your child that will show you exactly, are they constipated? But then also the level of how constipated are they. Now I'm going to talk about something really gross. If you don't want to get stuck into that, just skip the next 2-3 minutes. What can happen for a person or a child that is constipated is that you can get a buildup of poo in the system, and it can just get stuck in there, like lodged solid. Now, every time there's more food coming down into your intestine, it will add to the block. But what happens is there'll be a tiny little overflow. So a little bit of poo will be able to go past this big blockage and come out as little smears. So you will see little smeary accidents in their pants. They will complain, they will have a hard belly, and they will complain of tummy aches, and their appetite is going to be affected. And it might not actually look like constipation when they're doing a poo, because you might only get the overflow, which is kind of runny. So this is where a lot of people get really confused, because when you say constipation, you're thinking about hard bits of poo. Sorry, again, I know this is very graphic. But this is where you might want to do some more research. So you can look it up, constipation overflow in children. And this is something that specialists deal with all the time. An incontinence physio or other specialists, they deal with exactly that. They can help you monitor how constipated a child is. They can put you on a protocol, tell you exactly what level of laxatives your child is meant to take, how to deal with this situation. But what I've learned is that it's actually quite safe to have your child on laxatives. And when I say laxatives, what normally is prescribed is a stool softener. So what these stool softeners do is they moisten the dried out poo in the intestine to then be able to move that eventually. Now, these are obviously steps for extreme constipation. If your child struggles with that every now and then, what I have found quite helpful is to give probiotics to my child, which you can get as a powder and easily add to their food or drinks. You can also try giving them extra probiotic foods, which I also have found quite helpful for my child. So we're talking about kefir, yogurt drinks, anything fermented, sauerkraut if they will have it, kombucha, kefir, take your pick. If your child is struggling with restrictive food intake or you think they might have ARFID, you can go to your GP and have a referral to a pediatric dietitian. Now, these are very specialized people and they're a bit hard to come by if you're in a rural area. I do think there's some people that do this over telehealth as well. But as far as I know, it's good to have a good grip on what's going on before you go see them. So you might want to have everything else checked. You might need to do their bloods. You might need to go have an ultrasound somewhere to see how constipated are they, if you think that's what's happening. And if you have the opposite problem, if they have a lot of diarrhea, you might want to check them for food allergies. There's a lot of correlated things that could be the case. Sensitivities, allergies, IBS. Yeah, so this is a lot and I apologize, but you're the parent or you're the person suffering from that. You might be able to go through these, watch the video again later, and just bolt down the ones that make sense to you, that are relevant to you. And if in doubt, just always start with your GP. Hopefully you have a really good one. Someone who ideally is specialized in the age group you're dealing with, whether you're trying to care for your child or whether you're an adult having those issues. Now, this is a pretty big topic. I hope this little episode gave you an overview of what areas might be involved in helping someone to have good toileting habits. And there's so much more to it. I know that I have benefited from ongoing support as a parent in those areas. And this is also the reason why I'm somewhat knowledgeable. If you have any questions, please feel free to send a message and fire away. Any comments are welcome. I know this is not comprehensive. Again, it's such a huge topic, but feel free to comment, share your experiences. If you need more support, come over to the community, and I'm looking forward to talk to you more soon. Remember, you're not broken. You're not weird. Your kid's not weird. You're not a terrible parent. You're just Andy, like me.